without further ado, welcome Sandi Cauley.
Hi. That's such a long bio. I'm so sorry. I feel like we've already used up all our time and we're done. Thanks. Thank you guys for being here. When we talked about, when Nadia and I were talking about topics and Underdog came up, I was like, I think I can talk about that. I think I know a lot about being an underdog. You know, some of my favorite underdog movies we were talking about are like Rocky. That is one of my favorites. Rocky, The Karate Kid. I like Remember the Titans. I said Harry Potter. That guy's an underdog, right? Like he's an orphan and he comes back, right? So it's like underdogs. I mean, they rule my life. And in real life too, there's so many different underdogs that really inspire us. I was talking about Alexander Hamilton and how he's had this new rebirth, but he's an underdog. He's an immigrant, he's an orphan, he doesn't have any money, and yet we're still talking about him today. He designs our entire financial infrastructure. I was talking about the Miracle on Ice hockey team from the 80s that beat the Russians. That's a real life story. The Jamaican bobsled team. I mean, we love a good underdog story, and they inspire us and they're awesome. And I realize that I roll with underdogs. A lot of my friends are underdogs. I mean, Nadia and I both came into Scott's Edition, you know, minority women, minority business owners, like if you feel like an underdog. One of my good friends is David Harris. You guys probably don't know his name, but he's a pretty great underdog. He had the audacity to try to rename this historic street in Richmond after his late uncle, a black man who was a famous tennis player, but still, I mean, and I realized things have changed, but when I heard that he wanted to rename the boulevard after Arthur Ashe, I was like, there's no way this guy's crazy. I'm gonna help him out. I thought I was just gonna do like one little media piece because I knew the media. I ended up lending one hand and then two hands and then 2 feet and then my charm. And before I knew it, I was a part of the Get Fresh crew. And I was rolling with David and Don Treese and Baxton, JR, Andre, Priscilla. We are the Arthur Ashe Boulevard Initiative, and we got that shit done. And it's crazy. I still drive by the signs, and I'm like, oh my God, we renamed this street. It's amazing. The underdog story is definitely, I don't know, part of my background. Even my own business, Turn, which is a dance, strength training, and yoga studio. It falls under boutique fitness, but it's really unlike other boutique fitness. We kind of just made it up as we went. And really, I had no business opening up a business. I mean, I really shouldn't be doing this. I was a journalist. That's what I went to college for. I fell in love with the dance program. I'm not a dancer. I say that meaning I didn't go to college for dance. I didn't spend my life dancing. I took dance lessons when I was a little girl called ballet folklorico, which is like this Latin folk dancing, kind of like Irish river dancing. And I did it till I was like 9. And that was the extent of my dance background. I did everything else other kids do. I played soccer and I did marching band. And yet I fell in love with this dance program and I decided I was gonna open up my own business. And then I wanted to have strength training in it. I had never signed a commercial lease. I had no money. I had no bank loan. I had no business plan. I mean, I had no business, really. I had no business. I just had some people who believed in me. My friend Tracy Baylor said, we think you should start your own business. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I mean, thanks for thinking that. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I remember the day they handed me the key to the studio, the landlord said, I'll leave you now with your dreams. Like he knew, like, this was a dream. It wasn't even, the real thing. I didn't know fitness, but I knew that, I knew it from playing soccer and from training. I knew I had to bring someone in with me. So I collaborated. I met a woman named C.O. Kelleher, and she had all these fitness programs around Richmond at the time. She was doing like kickboxing and pound and boot camps. And I said, you have all of these fitness programs and no studio. And I have a studio and no fitness programs. How about you come work with me? And so we opened Turn. 2 weeks after we opened Turn, snow started to melt from a snowstorm. And you can play the video, Michelle. This $20,000 floor that I had leased to own was getting rained on when I walked in. CO called and she said, you have to come here. You have to come here now. And the floor was like, it was being buckled as we looked at it. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see it. I think it's at the, yeah, it's that slide 10. I think it is. I see it right there. Yeah. There you go. I don't know if you guys can see the water back there. So that room right there is 2,000 square feet. That floor, like I said, cost $20,000. I was still paying on it because remember, I didn't have any money, so it was leased to own. And I cried. I stood there and I cried. I was like, why didn't I get someone to read the lease? Why didn't I know about all of these things? But because I wasn't supposed to be owning a business. And a lot of people told me that I was going to make my family bankrupt, that it was a mistake, and that I shouldn't be doing it. And here we are, it's year 5, and we've been profitable, and we've kind of recreated boutique fitness. We kind of created this whole other thing. We've had celebrities come through. This is celebrity choreographer Phil Wright, and that's about 100 dancers. We partnered with Richmond Urban Dance, and we brought in a bunch of adults and students, and they came in and filled the space. And so you see, like, we just never quit. And I think that was the thing, right? Like, I just didn't know the word quit. And now I look at all of these things that we've accomplished, and it's still kind of amazing to me. And of course, now I own a fitness studio, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we can't group together. And so I had to kind of get creative again, and we've switched most of our classes to virtual. And we do a little bit more. We have boxing now, we have yoga, and as you can see, we're doing some virtual stuff. So when I was researching this topic, I was like, what does underdog mean exactly? Well, they call it an underdog because usually there's an underdog and there's a top dog. And so we have a lot of like Cinderella stories, but all the underdogs have the same attributes. They're all the same kinds of person. You know, they have nothing at the beginning. They have nothing to lose. They have a goal that is usually something they're very passionate about. They're empathetic people, so they feel other people's stories, and they never go it alone. They're really creative, and they have a lot of grit. I said a good underdog has no fucks to give. Sorry if that offends people, but they have 0 fucks. And so if you think about that, even with all the movies that we've watched, like I was talking about Rocky, you know, that guy is like training by punching meat in like in a meat locker. And then by the time he gets to like Rocky 3, right, or 4, I can't remember, when he's fighting the Russian Drago, he's like thrown in a barn and he's pulling it like an ox, and he's like in the snow. He's like, I got this. I don't need technology. I can do without. I know where I came from. And so that's where I want to talk about right now, is where I came from and maybe why I have some underdog tendencies. That picture that Michelle showed, these people look like they're 12 years old, and that's because they are. Those are my parents, and they're 17 years old in this picture. And in a few months after this picture was taken, they found out they were pregnant with me. They were both seniors in high school. My mom immediately dropped out and started to prepare to get her GED. And my dad, he had a conversation with my grandma, and she was like, you're going to get married. You're going to marry that girl, and you're going to do right by that baby. And my dad was like, okay. They got married in my grandparents' front yard or backyard, a yard. And my dad joined the Navy, and we moved to California. It's the end of the Vietnam War, and they had, you know, each other. By the time they were 21, they also had my brother in the mix, and we came back to Corpus Christi, where I'm from. So a little background on me: I'm a Tejana, which means I'm a Mexican American from Texas. My parents wanted me to have a lot of advantages in life, and so they thought that the best advantage they could give me was to not teach me Spanish. And there are a lot of kids in my age group, I won't tell you how old I am, but you can kind of guess, that didn't learn Spanish in South Texas or in Texas. I have a lot of girlfriends I went to college with, my friend Gloria and my friend Elizabeth. We call ourselves like Mexican white girls because we have no accent. We do not sound Hispanic. And for the most part, we kind of blend in. And that was kind of the life lesson my dad gave me. Don't label yourself. Don't call yourself a Mexican. You're an American. Um, don't talk about your politics. Don't talk about your religion. Don't talk about how much money you make. Just try to roll with everything and try to fit in. And my mom, her lessons are a little different. They're like, don't have sex before you're married. I want you to learn to do everything for yourself. Don't depend on anyone for anything else. And don't marry a Hispanic man, see lesson 1. And so like, that's her gift to me, is this like grit, or these very stoic lessons in life. And like any good Hispanic family, they depend a lot on their parents and their family, and they get taken in. And while a lot of people are going to like summer camp when they're kids, I go to Camp La Abuela. So when I was a kid, my great grandparents were still alive. I think you have a picture of them. They're the bride and the groom. So that's me when I was little. Let's see, it's the little bridegroom picture there. So these are my great grandparents. She also is a child bride. And they are immigrants to the United States from Mexico. My grandfather's part Native American, and they don't have but like a second grade education between the both of them. They immediately worked in cotton fields. They raised 3 sons. That's kind of like the theme of my life, 3 sons. And but they bought land. They were landowners, and they also were my daycare when I was little. My mom worked about 10-hour days. My dad was training to be a police officer. So they dropped us off a lot at my great grandmother's house. And she looked like, by the time when I met her, she looked like Grandma Coco from that movie Coco. Do you know what I'm talking about? That Disney cartoon. She wore her hair in braids, and she had the gray hair. She always wore dresses, and she always wore sandals. I don't think it was for comfort. I think it's because it, like, Hispanics, we like to use the chancla, like it's like a weapon. They take off their sandal and they spank you with it. The chancla, y'all know what I'm talking about. Or you might not. But she was rough, man. She didn't really like girls, and she definitely didn't like the fact that I didn't speak Spanish. So she would only speak Spanish to me, and it wasn't that she couldn't speak English, she just refused to. She rolled her own cigarettes, and she smoked a lot. And if she didn't have cigarettes, she would send me to the store with my cousin to go buy them for her. And I was probably like 7, and they would sell them to me because they knew who my La Abuela was. And on the way there, we might have to like walk by a cantina. That's a bar, a cantina. And it might be 10 in the morning, and there were still drunks in it, like stumbling out. I mean, it was the barrio of Corpus Christi. And you can see the little house. Let's go to their little house. So that was their house. It looked a lot better when I was a little kid. It always looked a lot bigger too. You see those power lines in the corner? I learned to throw a football over those power lines. I mean, that was my football field. And where that van is parked, that was someone else's lot. We learned to play kickball there. It'd be like, this pizza box is home base, and this glass bottle is first base, and this tire, we used to lay out on that roof in baby oil and like get suntans or burns or whatever it was. And you didn't hang out in the house because there's no air conditioning in there. It's only 3 rooms. There's no light fixtures. The bulb hangs from the ceiling. And you had to get outside. My grandmother, like I said, she had so much grit. My great grandmother, she would wake up at 4 a.m. and make homemade tortillas in there. And like on an open flame, she's turning them with her hand, and it's calloused because she's like hardcore, but she's got to send her sons to work with fresh tortillas so they can have tacos in their lunch. And they know, even though they don't have an education, I mean, they own this house, they own a house across the street. They send one of their sons to the University of Texas, and he becomes an educator. And they also raise chickens. not because they're into urban farming. You can show them the other picture. That's my great grandfather, but because he's into cockfighting. And so by the time I meet him, like there's chickens everywhere in their property in the city of Richmond, or city of Corpus Christi. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting my cities, in Corpus Christi. And I'm just this little kid, and I'm going out in the afternoons to get the eggs out of the coops. And yeah, and that's why, because I guess it was, now looking back, I guess it was the cover for the Roosters. I had no idea, the cover for their cockfighting that they did. But, again, some people are going to summer camp, they're eating hot dogs. I'm learning about tamales made from pork. And like, I know that they're really made from pork because one time I came into my grandmother's kitchen and there was like a whole pig head in the kitchen sink. Like, I'm like, oh, so that's like real. Okay, yeah. So it's an interesting time in my life, because while I'm spending the day at La Abuela's house, I'm going home to my parents' house, and they live in a suburb of Texas, or of Corpus Christi, a small city called Portland that's predominantly white. My parents are now middle class. They have carpet and indoor air conditioning. I have my own bedroom with a ceiling fan, and I'm spending the day with the Abuelos. And I'm learning a lot there, but my parents don't even know it. I told this story once. My grandmother sent me to the store and to buy groceries, and we forgot the bread, and my cousin left me on the corner of the street with the groceries. And she said, don't leave the groceries alone, because we don't want them to get stolen. And I'm like, right on. And she goes into the store, and when just in the few minutes she's gone, a white truck with a white man driving pulls up, and he looks at me. I mean, I don't know if you saw that little picture of me when I was a kid. You don't have to show it again. But he says, are you lost? Do you live around here? And I'm like, no, because I don't really live there, right? I'm visiting my grandmother. And he says, well, why don't you come with me? My wife has just baked cookies, and we have air conditioning, and you can wait at my house until your mom gets out of work. And it's South Texas, and it's the dead of summer, and it feels like 103. And I'm like, man, air conditioning and cookies sounds really good right now. But if I leave these groceries, my La Abuela is going to beat the shit out of me with her chancla. And like, I can't have that. And so by the grace of God, the Pepsi delivery driver starts to unload his truck, and his doors, they used to be made of wood, makes a very loud noise. And the man gets spooked, and he turns and he closes the pickup truck door, and he drives away. And I'm standing there, and the Pepsi man looks at me like, did something just happen? Like, he doesn't even know that he interceded in something. My cousin Georgina, that's her name because she was named after her dad George, she comes back and she says, what happened? And I tell her, I'm like, you're never going to believe what just happened. And she says, why didn't you run? And I said, well, you told me not to leave the groceries, and I didn't want the groceries to get stolen. I mean, we are kind of in the body of it. Like, who knows what would be here when I came back. And she's like, oh, you're right. She's like, let's not tell anybody, because if we tell grandma what happened, I'm going to get in trouble for leaving you alone, and you're going to get in trouble for not running. So let's just keep it our secret. And when we get back to grandma's house, I'll give you a popsicle, any flavor you want, red or green. Those are the flavors, red or green. But that was my life. And then I go to college. Well, I try to go to college, and the counselor at my high school tells me that I'm not college material, and that I shouldn't waste my time applying. My grades were kind of low, and by the grace of God, I get into my university. The first week I'm at school, I am on the drum line in college, and the boy next to me says, what's your name? And I said, Sandra Cano. And he said, it's not Cano, it's Cano, gringa. ¿Quién te crees? And I realized that, like, I'm living this duality where sometimes I'm denying my culture and sometimes I have to be in my culture. So I'm constantly moving through my identity. I bring that all back now. Last year was a really tough year for me. There were a lot of people that stood by my side and pulled me through. My best friend Holly, my boyfriend Rob, my aunt Melly, my friend Nadia, my fitness director Emily. I mean, they really just dragged me through 2019 so I wouldn't quit. It's the first time I ever thought about quitting. Just everything. I had just hit the bottom. Um, and really the only thing that brought me any sort of peace was volunteering. I got a little taste of it with Arthur Ashe, but I really fell in love with some children that I met at Green Elementary. I walked into this elementary school in Richmond, and it was not. It is 98% brown, 98% Latino, and it is like maybe 2% black or white. And I felt immediately like I was back home in Corpus Christi, like I was back in that neighborhood barrio with my grandparents or the Huelos. And I thought when I did this mentorship program, it's called Passport to Education, I'd be helping children that were probably in high school, girls. I thought I was going to get girls, and I was going to talk to them about being an entrepreneur and about going to college and about aspiring to be a journalist and all this stuff that I had done in my life. And I got 3 little boys. Of course I got 3 boys. And they're in the 5th grade, and some of them were first generation. They had just gotten here. And one little boy said to me, he was like, you know, he could barely speak English. And I was like, do you like Fortnite? And they was like, Steam, it was the Fortnite. I was like, I can do the dances. I can do the Orange Justice and the Backpack Kid, you know, because I learned them from Rudd and my studio. And they just thought I was the coolest. And we became friends. We talk about soccer and Barcelona and Messi. And I asked them if they like the Cowboys because I love the Cowboys. And they were like, who are the Cowboys? Because, you know, they're not Tejanos. I'm a Tejana, but they're great kids. And so we have bonded, and I have done this mentorship for 2 years now. And it brings me so much comfort and so much joy. I'm sure they think I'm there to help them, but they really have helped me kind of connect to my past and to the things that brought me to this point. They kind of, let's say, put me in check about being grateful for the things that I had. And suddenly 2019 wasn't as bad as I had thought. So I guess, you know, that is kind of my underdog story. But in mentoring with those children, I see their little underdog stories kind of unfolding. And I've realized that whatever I thought success looked like early on, I thought owning a business or going into journalism or any of that was going to be what my success was. And it really has been in doing things like this, in helping other people, in using my gifts or even my business to connect. And that kind of is what actually got me. I mean, I thought I was going to help the Hispanic Chamber and they were going to help me find business, and I ended up doing this mentorship program. So I realized through all of that, what I had suppressed and pushed away of my ethnicity and my culture has actually kind of come full circle and served me differently in some joy. So anyway, so that, I just wanted to kind of share that with you today about, like, anyway, why I was crazy enough to open a fitness studio. And it probably has to do with the whole chancla.
Thank you, Sandi, for sharing that. It's absolutely beautiful to hear your story. We would love to take some questions from our studio audience.
So Sandi, growing up in my house, the chancla was the switch. And it got real when you had to go pick your own switch.
Yeah. You learn that butt cover real well. With like one hand.
Yeah. So Sandy, tell us, while people are kind of thinking about maybe deeper questions, tell us if people want to try out Turn or try out some Zoom workouts, like what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to turnrva.com and we have a list there of all the classes that we're offering, and you just decide if you want to come in studio, if you want to come in virtually. People are still kind of feeling that out, as you know, like just through life. We're all trying to figure out whether we want to be in person or whether we want to be virtual. And so we're just offering both. The class sizes are really small right now. So if you do come in studio, you might be with 3 people or maybe at a max 10, but you saw how big, I don't know if you kind of gleamed how big that room is. It's pretty big. So we're able to space out really well. We have a lot of procedures in place to kind of keep people safe, but the Zoom is kind of where it's at right now. We do see a lot of people in there dancing with us.
Awesome. Yeah, I see somebody in the chat saying that they had the wooden spoon spatula. And somebody else said belt and fly swatter.
See, I mean,
we had belts too. Yeah, with the switches.
Kids think they have it bad because they have to go sit in the corner.
Oh, look at that. Oh, no.
They don't even know.
All right, so let's see. Can we find Alex?
Yeah, we have a question. I'll go ahead. Sierra Fox. Sierra's on here. I see you somewhere, but what's something you wish you have learned in life that you wish you knew earlier on?
Oh, I wish I had spent more time happier in my own skin early on. I felt like I kind of was always measuring myself against everybody else. And, it's almost a shame that as you get to like your later part of life that, why was I so mean to myself in my 20s? I wasn't, I was fit. Why did I call myself fat? Why did I say I was ugly? I look cute. Like, I wish I was nicer to myself when I was younger. That would have helped.
So Lindsay, I found Alex. Alex, are you comfortable asking your question? I'll unmute you if you want.
Unmute me. I don't know how to
Hey,
myself.
do it.
Hi. Thanks for your presentation. It was lovely. I think my question is a little bit like, when the person told you that you weren't like a good candidate for college, what kind of made you say like, well, heck with you and go anyway? Like, was that you? Was that your family?
Yeah, my mom she was pretty tough. She wasn't going to take no for an answer. So she insisted that I was going to college. And I had a lot of dreams. I mean, we didn't get into it, but when I was a kid, I would write poems and songs and stories. I knew from a really young age that I enjoyed writing and that I was a really creative person. I just didn't have good study skills. And like, again, my family, they talked about, the importance of education. Like, we want you to go to college. We want you to be successful. They didn't have the skills. So they didn't teach me how to study. They didn't know like how to prepare me for college. They just kind of said, get there. And so when she said no, I was like, well, I got to find another way to get there, because I like writing and I like the idea of I wanted to write books for a living. My mom said, nobody's going to buy your book. So you better find something else. And I ended up in
supportive moms.
She's shrewd, but right? Like, we don't know you were going to buy your book. So she was like, you better find something else. She wanted me to be a lawyer. She said I argued with her so well, I should be a lawyer. I ended up a journalist.
So Caitlin A., I see that you have a question. Can I unmute you to ask it?
Yeah, no problem. So thank you for sharing your story, Sandy. I was wondering, when you're starting your own business, especially starting from 0 clients, like, how do you stay true to yourself and your business like vision while like fighting off your own pressures of anxiety to succeed, because it's like, you got to find people, but you want to like not be too salesy, I guess. I'm starting an insurance agency in Midlothian. So I want to, stay true to who I am and not be too salesy. Jolene and I've talked about it before, but like,
it's really,
how do you do that? Yeah.
That I have a couple of things. I don't believe in getting into something if I'm not passionate about it. if I don't love it and believe in it wholeheartedly, then I can't get other people behind it. So I'm very careful about the jobs I take. If it's something like, oh, we want you to hammer nails in this board, I'm like, well, I can do that, but I'm going to get tired of that very fast. So first of all, I would say you have to be passionate. And then the other thing is I'm a big believer in collaboration. So I kind of like to do what I'm doing because it makes me happy and brings me joy. And if I need more help to kind of get people to the circle, I like to collaborate. And I've talked to a few people about this. I don't believe in making lines. Like when you make a connection, people make lines like, here's my business card, and then here's your business card. And if I need a person who, hammers nails, I'll be sure to call you. What I believe in is that the true relationship and collaboration is to make a circle. So it's, how can I become a villager in your village? How can I become part of your world? How can you become part of mine? So that we're interacting and it's more authentic. And so it feels more passionate for the two of us. So
I love that mindset too. Think of it like a circle. That's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Alan.
He's ready to ask. Oh, Alan, we can't hear you though.
There we go. Sorry, I turned off my mute. Thank you for your presentation. This was really awesome and very refreshing. It's always good to hear folks' authentic stories. And again, I have used mentoring in a very similar way as you. When at your lowest point, it's good to find ways to give back to your community. And I had 3 Latino boys from Bouchard Middle School that I've mentored from 6th grade, and now they're in the 12th grade. And obviously with COVID, as soon as March hit and schools closed, they immediately started working to help support their families. And so now they're kind of getting their first little taste of money, and all of a sudden their college aspirations and dreams seem a little bit on the backseat. So I'm wondering, how can I help them with continuing their underdog story that I've been working with them on?
Yeah, I think, I had the same problem, or the same issue, right? School kind of came to a halt. So my mentorship kind of came to a halt too. I think you're doing great if you can keep up with them on the outside and keep encouraging them, especially if they're Latino. And I hate to say this because it's probably not like this in all of it, but the culture itself, I've talked about it with some of my friends who are also adult Latinos, and our culture is kind of a guilty culture. So like the lessons that the one little boy told me at Green, he said, I have to do well. The teacher says I'm stupid, but I have to do well because my dad says if I don't do well, he's going to send me back to Mexico. And he wasn't alone. There's a lot of little kids that kind of think that, like they come over and they're like, don't waste, the parents are really trying to say, don't waste your opportunity. But what they say is if you don't do a good job, I'm going to send you back to the other side. And so, I tried to say to him, well, sometimes parents say things they don't mean. They're just trying to get the best out of you. And he's like, no, like, cause he already knows, like, it's like my mom, you're like, you're going to college. I'm like, okay. So I think offering a soft side of life, offering that other side to those children that you mentor and saying, this is what your hard work can end up looking like. And this is what skills and attributes you already have that can get you there, and zone in on them. Like I had an uncle who said to me, you're good at this. You need to make sure you do this. And I listened to that. So at a really young age, you start putting that tape in your head that says whether or not you have value and whether or not you have worth. And it's really important that you hear it from all over. I also believe we have parents, but there are a lot of people that parent you along the way. And there are people who still parent me, and they're my friends, they're adults and they don't even know it, but like, you're my other dad, things that you just said, like you're just kind of dadded me and you didn't even realize it. But I think they need to hear more encouraging words from the outside. And sometimes that's all it takes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sandi, I have a question for you. How do you feel like your creativity has helped serve you in your life or your ambition or just as a person?
I think, sometimes you don't have all the tools in your belt. You don't have all the tools in your arsenal. Even sometimes in television, I worked at television stations that had like broken live trucks or broken, equipment, and being creative kind of always never made me feel like I couldn't accomplish something. Because I was creative, I always felt like I can get there. There's always an alternate route to get somewhere. There's black, white, gray. There's how am I going to find the answer? And so I think, even with Turn, like we became very creative. I knew I had a dance program, but I was like, does it have to just be dance? Can it be dance and surf and, pound and strength training? So I've always thought kind of naturally my creative mind allowed me to take different steps than what the traditional path said I should do, go a different way. And so I do think that's how creatives kind of operate.
Yeah.
And I do think, and maybe it's just me, but I'm okay with change. And I think that's a creative mindset too. Like a lot of people get scared of change. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to go a new way to work. I like this way. But creatives are like, no, let me see what happens when I go this way,
Yeah.
And so that can bring new efficiencies.
Any other questions, anybody?
You guys are awesome.
I have one.
I heard someone.
Yeah, me. Did you end up learning Spanish at the end, or are you learning right now?
What's funny is because at my La Abuela's house, she only spoke Spanish. Only. If I wanted anything, a soda or anything, I had to speak Spanish to her, or she was not giving it to me. It was, it was like drowning in the deep end of the pool. And then at home, they didn't speak it at all unless they were talking about us. So it became like a code, right? And so you're like, I'm just listening for my name, right? But what ends up happening is your ears get really tuned to it. So if I'm walking up in a Mexican restaurant or anywhere and people are like speaking Spanish, I'm like, I know everything you're saying. So if you're talking about me, I know. I may have to answer in English or broken Spanish, but I get there. I joke because I spent so much time with La Abuela, I'm really good at household Spanish. So anything that happens in the house, which means if you take me to a Mexican restaurant, I'm going to order the shit out of that menu. Like I'm on it. And the people come to the table and I'm like, yes, necesito un tenedor, también quiero enchiladas, dos platos por favor. And the people are like, oh my God, you're bilingual. It's so amazing. And I'm like, nah, like, I'm okay. I'm never going to starve. But I did get pretty good at it because I had to take it for 2 years in high school and for 4 semesters in college to get my degree. But man, I tell you what, in Richmond, there are not a lot of people speaking Spanish, and you do lose it if you don't use it. And the little kids at Green Elementary, for some reason, they bring me so much comfort that I'll speak Spanish with them pretty fluently, and it's like I'm a native speaker because they're 5th grade. So I guess maybe I don't feel intimidated. So I'll just start going and interacting with them, and everything's fine. They also don't make fun of me if I get it wrong because their English is a little broken too, so that we're kind of all on equal footing, and somehow it just works.
That's awesome.
I didn't see any other questions come through, but if you have any other questions, you can feel free to ask them now.
I have a question. I'm Mo, and I loved the idea of you just moving into this studio. I don't have any business background. I don't have a plan. So what's your obvious disassociation with fear? Like, where is the basis of that courage that you find in just jumping in and doing it? That from your underdog story.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I don't have fear. I definitely don't. I like calculated risk. So, you know, my friend Tracy said, you should open up your own studio. And that was in 2007. And I don't actually do it. And I don't sign a lease until 2014. So I'm constantly, you know, testing the water to make sure it's good for a jump. And even with Scott Hill, my friend Allie and I, she has a skill set in marketing and I have the skill set in news and PR. And it took us several months before we both jumped. We were both kind of calculated risk takers too. So I wouldn't say I don't have fear, but I do sometimes hear this like voice in the back of my head that's like, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? It doesn't work out, you shut it down. I mean, at the time when I opened Turn, I was still working as a journalist. So I was like, this is my side gig really. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, I can go back to what I had before, which was just teaching dance classes at Gold's Gym. I can still do that, or in my garage. And so I think when you have that, like, you know, there's like, I can't really fail because fail is, so what? I mean, when I look back at these pictures of my great grandmother's house and I'm like, that's the start. So really there is no fail. Like if that was my start, that's a long fall to get back there. Right. So I'm like, I'm okay. I'll be okay. I have a lot of skills. But yeah, I like calculated risk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. We have time for one more if anybody's got one. Any brave soul.
Any brave soul
Who wants to unmute themselves and speak to the people.
I have one.
Okay.
I have one. Are you gonna teach folklorico?
Oh, I would love to. Nobody does that. You know, I only did it till I was like 9, so I never did it again. Now I teach hip hop. And I learn.
Are you willing to do it though? Are you willing to teach at least for a grain?
I have gone to the Latin ballet and I have talked to them because they do flamenco, which is a little bit different. And I have talked to Lisa with the Hispanic Chamber, and they do tell me there's someone that does folklorico, but I don't know how it would go. I would like to do it. It would be great. But the truth is I never saw myself as a Latin dancer. That's kind of like, or Latino dancer, like it's kind of in there. One time I should tell you, the dancer in my head, because when you're a dancer, there's this little dancer that lives in your head and you can see them dancing. Nobody else sees them. Mine is a b-boy. It's a guy. He breaks teen. And he comes out with like the cardboard box and he gets out and he b-boys. That's my dancer. I don't know why. I think because I grew up in that like Beat Street era. But the reality is if you throw like Despacito on the radio, like you should see me move. My body just starts doing something like on its own. And people are like, oh my God, J-Lo, who brought you here? Instinctive, it just kind of comes out. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I could move like that, but I guess I can. Awesome. So I think that I would love the opportunity to learn folklorico because I think I would probably still be able to do it, but I got to find somebody to teach me again because I didn't, you know, I stopped when I was so young.
Sandy, if you learn it, you'll have to let us know when the class is so we can get everybody signed up for it.
It's elaborate. Y'all know what I'm talking. So y'all probably don't know what I'm talking about.
We'll have to look it up.
You know, when you see those like Mexican, they always do it like for like a Mexican festival. They'll show like a woman in a big skirt and the skirt's big and it's got all the ribbons on it. And she's got the ribbons in her hair. They wear these lace up boots with taps in the heel.
Oh, cool.
And they her dance. And it's awesome. I mean, it is very, awesome. I got to that point because I was just a little kid.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for all the brave souls that were willing to unmute and ask your questions. We are at time. Thank you again for showing up to Creative Mornings. We will see you again on August 21st. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.